welcome to another episode of the thehodgypodgypod. I'm your host, Lauren Strati, and today is another one of our Menagerie Mondays. This is where I do my very best to start your week off right on a positive note, more relaxed. This isn't quite as serious as our Thursday episodes. It's meant to make you dread Mondays less. Just a little something for you to look forward to when the dreaded Mondays happen. So today I want to talk about something that most of us can remember when we think back to Fridays, something that we loved as a kid, and that's TGIF. I, for one, absolutely loved TGIF as a kid. I always looked forward to it. It was something after a long week at school, I knew my mom would let me sit down for a couple of hours and watch that. And to me, I absolutely just loved it. So I am going to talk about a couple of fun facts about that stuff because, as a kid, you don't care about any of that stuff. You just watch the shows. You have no idea what work went into it, what any of it means. No idea. You're just a kid watching shows. But as adults, we can kind of appreciate the hard work that went into all of this. And for me, I've read this huge article all about TGIF, and they interviewed multiple stars from the shows that aired during that time frame, and I found out a ton of stuff I just had no idea. Even they interviewed producers, the creators, writers, and they had all this information about these shows and how they got put together and even the name, and I was just like, what? I had even the name. When you think of TGIF, you probably think that it means thank goodness it's Friday or thank God it's Friday. But it actually, for ABC, those shows, it stood for thank goodness it's funny. I had no idea. I'm like, no, we're all thinking thank goodness it's Friday. But it's thank goodness it's funny because all the other networks had dramas on and nobody else was doing anything funny. So that was their hook, getting people to watch shows with their kids on and something that was appropriate for families, and that was TGIF because they were all funny shows. So I found that really interesting because I had no idea. I thought TGIF and I thought about the restaurant that I loved as a kid and then this. But so when thinking back on TGIF, I asked other people what shows they thought of that they loved growing up. And it's funny, now that we're adults with kids of our own, and some of these kids are getting to be the age we were when TGIF was on, they're having their kids watch those shows too, which I think is really fun and interesting. And a lot of people mentioned Full House was the number one show that people remember watching on TGIF, which is funny because I only remember watching it on Tuesdays. I never remember watching it on Fridays. So that was weird. I always remember Family Matters or Step by Step and Boy Meets World or Sabrina. Those were the ones, and Dinosaurs, of course. I remember those. But so people said that they loved Full House, Family Matters, like I said, Step by Step, Boy Meets World, and one of my favorites was Sabrina. I always wished that I could be her. I grew up loving Melissa Joan Hart as Clarissa, and then when she became Sabrina and she had all these powers, I was like, oh my gosh, I just wish I could be her. Wanted her life. I just absolutely loved watching that show and watching everybody. I grew up as they all grew up. We all did. We all grew up watching these kids on these shows grow up. And I think that I definitely think we miss having those shows. We love that feeling. It gives us that warm, comforting feeling inside. And I think that we need more shows like that. But at the same time, it's when you go back and you watch some of these shows, they're probably not meant for this time anymore. They're a little dated, I guess. They're still great. Some of them still have really good lessons, which I think we all, maybe as kids, we didn't really realize how much we appreciated those lessons because, again, we were kids. But our parents knew that they could sit us in front of the TV or they could watch it with us and know that it was safe. There wasn't going to be anything crazy on these shows that needed to be censored. From reading this massive article about TGIF, I did not realize how much went into basically protecting the people that were watching the shows. They wanted to make sure that everything was appropriate. And some things, but also they covered serious topics too. Like they covered death, they covered drugs, eating disorders, they covered mental health, racism, discrimination, some violence, sexual harassment, stuff like that. They covered all the topics, but they did it in like a sensitive way where kids could understand it too, and kids could appreciate what they were seeing and know that, hey, DJ is talking to her dad on Full House about this issue. I wonder if I could talk to my parents. I should be able to talk to my parents after seeing that. Like, I know it was uncomfortable for her, but I could do that too. And they've even said, the creators of TGIF and the creators of those shows and the stars have had people come up to them and say, my teenage son was able to talk to me about a topic that was really difficult for him because of watching your show. And I think that's really cool that a show like that could do that. A show like Full House or Family Matters, or where, yeah, it's cheesy and corny, and, you know, you get that music, or, you know, like, oh man, here comes the hugs and the aw from the audience and stuff. But it's like, but you also get that lesson. And whether you rolled your eyes or not at how cheesy and corny it was still a good lesson, whatever it was. Like, you never watched one of those shows without being like, I think I learned a little bit. It was funny though, but I think I learned something. And I think I don't know if we have any shows like that anymore. If you know shows that are like that, then share them with me. Maybe I can get my kids into them. But I have them watch old school TV. I know that's safe. I know what's in those shows. I'm okay with it. And like watching TGIF, those shows were great. And I think that some of the shows were really, I don't know about anybody else, but I didn't grow up in like a normal household, so they kind of, every Friday I kind of felt that I was part of those families. It made me feel like I was with them, and it gave me a little bit of a break from my own reality. And I just pictured being Sabrina the Teenage Witch, or being a part of the Step by Step family, or even like hanging out with Urkel, stuff like that. Just having a good time, a little bit of an escape with good people. But there were so many things about these shows that you had no idea. Like, I had no idea that Family Matters started off as, the writers said, like, it was one of the worst scripts they had ever written. They had to write all these scripts. They were constantly trying to create perfect shows for these 4 time slots. And Family Matters was just like a train wreck. And then they were filming, it was episode 12 of season 1, and they were filming this episode, and in walks Steve Urkel, and the audience absolutely loved that character. And he was only supposed to be on there for 1 episode, just the one, on episode 12. But the audience absolutely loved him so much that they even, like, the person who played the character, Jaleel White, he even walked the audience out to their cars. Like, he was all about making friends, and but he was just supposed to be there the one time. And he filmed that episode on Friday. Then Monday he gets a call. He gets pulled out of class, and they're like, "We need to sign you up to be a series regular." And they absolutely were like, "We need this kid." And he essentially saved the show and made the show what we know it to be now. And when you think of Family Matters, I think of Carl, and I think of Steve Urkel. And they loved him so much that they even put him in a small part of episode 4 just to get him in sooner, just to kind of like introduce him real quick. And they trying to like trickle him in so they realized how much his weird little quirks were funny to kids and how much they loved him. Like, I had the baby from Dinosaurs that said "not the mama" and all the things like the pull string, and then I had the Steve Urkel where you pulled it and he said, "Got any cheese?" or "Did I do that?" And those were two things that I absolutely loved having as a kid. They were awesome. But I had no idea. You don't know those things, but he was supposed to be there the one time, and he ended up being like the whole show. It's crazy. And there was Dinosaurs. When you think about Dinosaurs, if you don't remember that show, because I don't think when I talked to my husband about it, I don't think he remembered what Dinosaurs was. But I had no idea that they were supposed to have the dinosaur that was Earl Sinclair. Like, he's this big old, like, when you think of a classic, like, blue blood American man, like, you think like a bigger guy, like Dan from Roseanne, but in dinosaur form. And that's what he was. But originally he was supposed to look a lot more mean and tall and menacing. But once they figured out that they need the baby, somebody came up with the idea of having a baby and saying, like, "not the mama." And they all just stopped. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is gold. And so, like, well, if we have this baby and he ends up being like talking back and clashing with the dad, we have to have the dad look more normal. And so they basically took a shovel to this dinosaur they had created, and they created Earl Sinclair that we all know, or I know, that we know today, which is this big, clunky, lovable dinosaur man. And I had no idea that you just assumed that the baby was always supposed to be a part of it, but they realized they needed that baby, and they had to change things to work around that. And it's funny because today, when I was doing more research for this, I watched the series finale of Dinosaurs. And as a kid, there's only so much you can retain about these things. But I had no idea that they ended that show with them basically going extinct. Like, they were going to freeze to death. And it was Earl's fault. They had messed up the world. They were kind of ahead of their time. They were, I guess you could say that they were woke or whatever. They took on big oil in the 90s, which was like unheard of. That was something that we talk about now, but that show, I had no idea that that's how that show ended, because it was always so funny to me. But we all know that the dinosaurs went extinct and whatever, and so the creators of the show said, well, if you're going to end the show, we're going to end the dinosaurs. And that's what they did. They had him and his coworkers mess up the entire world so bad that they had no more sun because it was covered by clouds. and it was snowing and they were all going to freeze. And the lesson was basically, he said, yeah, I made a mistake, I messed up, and I didn't realize how precious our world was, and I took it for granted, and I didn't realize how all of these things, plants and sun and water, I didn't realize how all of these things mattered. And it was like a good lesson, and it was, but people were like, man, this shit's dark. This shit's dark for a kid show. And, but I appreciate it. I understand why they did it. But as a kid, I had no idea. I obviously didn't see that episode, or I blocked it from my memory, but it's crazy to think back and rewatch that and go, dang, that was deep and that was dark. But so there's so many different things about these shows that we just don't remember or don't know, because that was just, I read it in an article and I thought it was fascinating. But the things we truly loved about these shows were, I think for me, it was just, I could just relax and have fun and just watch it and learn something and feel warm and cozy and cuddly inside. And I loved watching them figure out these solutions to these problems together. And I know that even the creators of TGIF said they wish that they could recreate that now. And those that were on the shows said like they were a family themselves, and you could feel that when you watch those shows. And they had crossover episodes. You guys remember when they had Steve Urkel in like Step by Step, he landed on their lawn with a rocket strapped to his back, or he was on Full House, and they had different characters on different episodes. Or the one like where they all connected, they were at like a theme park or Disney World or Disneyland or something, and you saw all of them throughout the episodes. I absolutely loved those. But they were like a real family. They grew up together, they did school together, and when looking back now, it's like you could really feel that from all of those shows. And I really loved that, and you could feel it. And I think that's what a lot of people really liked about it and loved it, and that's why they miss it and they still think about it fondly when they think about TGIF. They're like, that was so good. They just have good memories. Like, it's Friday, you get to watch your parents like know that these shows are good, so you get to sit down for 2 hours without getting bugged by your parents. Sometimes they'd order round table, or like I remember getting Jack in the Box and like my little sourdough Jack and my cappuccino milkshake, which I really wish they'd bring back. Not that I eat Jack in the Box, but cappuccino shake. It's really good. But I have weird memories about stuff like that, because I just enjoyed watching those shows and knowing I could relax from the week. And then I think the way that they really worked hard to make sure, and this TGIF went from 1989 to 2000. That was like the true span of it. They tried to revive it a couple years later, but kids were growing up. It wasn't everything sputtered out. We all grew up. But during that time, they really worked hard to make those shows good for us. And obviously, they were making money, but critics absolutely hated the shows. They hated them. But audiences loved them. And ratings showed that people loved them. So the critics kind of shut up. Like, once you're making all this money and you're having all these people watch it and you're getting all this wonderful feedback from people, critics don't really mean much. So it was really a really good time in television, and it was real human connection, and it had heart, and we don't really see that much now. It's all about the drama and how can we top this episode, and what can we do, to be relatable with all the craziness in the world. And but that causes us as parents now to have to censor our kids' shows, or like Google what's going on in them before our kids watch them. And we didn't have to, we didn't really have Google back then, but our parents knew that we didn't need to be protected from TGIF. They were like, we get a break. And they set us down and they walked away. And it was great for everybody. So I don't know about you guys. It still holds a special place in my heart. I know growing up that it was the Friday and Saturday nights, like TGIF and then Snick. Those were my jams. And then I think that, I don't know if I would ever rewatch any of those shows though. I think I kind of want to keep those memories safe because, some of them, like I said before, are dated. Their lessons are not, we've learned from that stuff. So going back, the way that they were, some of the things that were done, or some of the characters were like, ugh, yeah, like really cringy, not something that would be very popular nowadays. And it's funny, I was torn about doing this episode after reading, and I saw this TikTok video about Corey Matthews. Like, it just popped up randomly. Thanks, TikTok, for listening to my stuff here and putting it on my little feed. But it was a TikTok video about why Corey Matthews is the worst. And I was like, no. And they played this video of an episode of Corey and how he treated Topanga and how he treated Sean. And this woman would like come in and commentate and like make her comments about how he was and how he was the worst. I'm like, oh. And then I read an article about it. I'm like, is it true? Was he really the worst? And there's Reddit threads, there's articles, there's all sorts of things about how Corey Matthews was the worst. I'm like, no, my childhood. Because, when you watch it, you just think they're just regular kids, and you don't think of any of that stuff. It's like you understand the lessons to a certain extent, but it really doesn't go deeper than that. But when you watch this guy and how he treats his friends and his family, and you're just like, man, this guy's such an asshole. But I know that it partially was to get the lesson, like, if you are like this to people, then there are consequences, and it shows you basically how not to be. Like, please don't be like this. And it was really interesting. And seeing that little snippet and reading a couple of those articles, I was like, maybe, because I was thinking like, oh, I could go back and watch TGIF again and make like Friday nights or TGIF nights and whatever. But after seeing that, I'm like, maybe not. Maybe I should just keep it in my little childhood box and just not open that again. I'm sure I'll have my kids watch some shows like Sabrina or Family Matters. But like my son was watching that episode of the dinosaurs with me, that series finale episode. He's like, that's so sad. I wish they didn't do that. And he's super sensitive like me, and he's just like, that's terrible that they died, Mama. And I'm like, I know, I'm so sorry, son. And he was just like, I don't want to watch it. So there's some things I probably won't let them watch. But I think like Sabrina, when at the beginning of the seasons, or Family Matters is good. And like they love watching Home Improvement, things like that. But, sometimes it's good to think about our childhood and like the good old days and what we loved about them. But then we realize that that stuff needs to maybe stay there. And I think like they've tried to do reboots. Like I know they did Girl Meets World, and that was okay. And you got to learn what happened to the family, and like they had, their children and all that stuff, and it was decent, wasn't terrible. And Fuller House, I loved Fuller House. I thought that was really great. That was something that I'm really glad that they did. If you haven't watched Fuller House. I highly recommend it on Netflix. It's really good. It's super nostalgic. The way that they just bring everything back. I absolutely love that. And they did a really good job of recapturing the magic, and while also respecting that those fans that grew up watching it have grown up as well. So reboots is another episode I will do, because there are tons of reboots that have happened that some were good, but most of them have been not great. And so I want to talk about those with you guys. What if you guys have seen any of them, and what ones did you like? If you've seen Fuller House, did you like that they brought that back? And what reboots were you like, what the hell? Why couldn't they just let it? Why do they have to reinvent everything all the time? Like Quantum Leap. They redid Quantum Leap, and I think it lasted like a season. Like you can't replace those two main characters. You just can't. But they still try. So, but like I said, that will be another episode down the road. Next Menagerie Monday is going to be Halloween themed. So I'm excited about that. But I'm going to start to wrap this up. But before I go, as usual with Menagerie Mondays, we have to do the Mandela effects. I want to know if you guys have had any Mandela effects of your own, or if you related to the ones that I said in my previous episode, and what you think about those. If you think I'm just a crazy nut bar, or if you, or like, oh my God, wait, he never had that, or what? And if you go, wait, I thought this was this way my whole life, you're kidding me. It's not that way. And I have got a lot. So this week I'm going to do, there's the spelling of it, and it's, people will say, oh, well, you're just remembering things wrong. And you'll get that a lot, especially when it comes to like the spelling of things. But like Looney Tunes. Looney Tunes is spelled tunes, Tunes, like music. But how often, unless it's Bugs Bunny dressed in opera, or massaging Elmer Fudd's head, how often do they sing? Does it make any sense that Looney Tunes, which are cartoons, is spelled tunes like music? And I always remember it being Toons, like cartoons. They're crazy cartoons. But it's not that way. But Tiny Toons is spelled with the Toons. So I'm like, do you guys not notice that there's a discrepancy here? So I remember, because that's the way my brain takes snapshots of things, and I remember it always being Toons. But it's not. It's tunes, Tunes. That one has always bugged me, especially when my kids will watch Looney Tunes. It always gets me. But this has been one, and my husband will sometimes roll his eyes when I get into my whole Mandela effect thing, but this one got him. And as I said, okay, I need you to do this for me. And so if you're able to, and you're not driving or anything, I want you to think back to the 90s, and I want you to do the Macarena for me really quick. I want you to do it and tell me, so you're doing this, right? And you're probably doing this, and you're probably doing this, and then cross your hands on your hips and all that. This and the crossing of the hips does not happen in the official video. It doesn't happen. It doesn't exist. Never existed. Every video that we've seen of people doing it, what we used to do as kids, what we used to do at the roller rink, at the ice rink when I was growing up, where we do the whole cross thing, doesn't exist in the original video. That would be the only way us kids growing up in the 90s would have seen it, was that video. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have YouTube. We didn't have any of that stuff. It would have been VH1 or MTV. That's what we would have seen. That's where we would have seen it. Like on pop-up video, it would have been like, going through the whole thing. But it goes like this, then goes right to here, and then hands on the butt. And that's it. And you can tell, you can watch it, and you'll be like, what? Like, it just seems weird and off. And I tested my in-laws. We've seen different people do it, like at my son's baseball practice. They were doing signs for stealing bases. And the coach's son was at third giving the signal, and he did the Macarena like this and did the whole thing and crossed his arms and everything. And my son's jaw just was like, oh, see, you did it. Like, yeah, because that's what it was. But for some reason, the video has changed. And you could see performances from the two guys, standing at the microphone, two guys singing. There's a performance, a live performance, and they've got like 20 to 30 dancers out there, and they do the full thing with the cross and everything. But the video itself doesn't have that. And it's just like, if you go on YouTube and you watch it, like you see it, and you see them do this, and you see them go like this, and it's just like, what the hell? It looks so weird, so unnatural. And that one, that along with the cornucopia from Fruit of the Loom, like I said, I think I said that last time, but stuff like that just blows my mind, because it's like, you can feel that it's unnatural, but you don't, what's the purpose? To make us all think that we're crazy? Like, I don't know the purpose of these things, and I'm not about to get into any conspiracy theory stuff, because my husband reminded me that if you want to get into conspiracy theories, most of the time it has to do with the government, and you're trying to not talk about politics on your podcast. So I kind of have to avoid conspiracy theories by default, because they're all together. But I don't know why. I don't know why these things happen. And like I said, I have so many other Mandela effects, and I think I've asked different family members if they remember certain things, and they'll be like, it's this way, right? I'm like, no, it's not. But it is. But it's not. And then I show them, and they're like, but wait. And it's not just us misremembering. We're not like thousands of people aren't misremembering how to do the Macarena when we all learned it from VH1 and MTV. Like, it's super interesting, and I find them fascinating. And if you have anything like that, please DM me or send me an email. All of the information, how to get to me through social media or email, will be listed in the show notes. And let me know what you loved most about TGIF. I want all of the info from you guys. I just think that even if shows don't really click nowadays, like, they still have the good lessons. They were still full of heart. They were still innocent. And I absolutely loved the innocence of those shows. And I know that a lot of you with kids now can appreciate that as well. And even though we can't really go back to some of them, because it might taint our childhood a little bit, seeing characters in a different light now that we are grown up, I will always look on those shows and that time fondly, and I hope you guys do as well. And I hope that you learned some interesting facts today, like I did. That stuff I had no idea about any of those things until I read that big article. But so if you have any favorites about TGIF, let me know. Or Snick. If you grew up with Snick, I might do an episode about that, because Are You Afraid of the Dark was my jam, and I loved it so much. But let me know. So you've got an assignment. You gotta let me know what you loved about TGIF, what you loved about Snick, and if you have any weird Mandela effects or anything like that, where you're like, I swear it was this way, how is it this way, and you feel like you're losing your damn mind. Let me know. Send me all of it. I want to know. And then this next episode is going to be about Halloween, classic Halloween movies. or scary movies. So I really look forward to doing that and getting into fall and Halloween. It's one of my favorite times of year. So I just really look forward to talking about that with you guys. But don't be shy. Send me all your stuff. I want to connect with you guys. I know that this podcast is new. I think this is this will be probably like my 4th or 5th episode, wherever it lands. And I know I'm still finding my way with this, so I appreciate you guys hanging in there, giving me grace while I find my little sea legs in this podcast ocean, because it's really overwhelming. But I really, really appreciate you guys supporting me and listening, and I look forward to hearing from you all, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. Hope this perked your week up a little bit and makes the rest of your week a little less stressful, and I will see you guys on Thursday. Have a good week, guys.